the computer. So it should, yeah, it's good. And I am recording the video, so that way if students want to like watch it later, you'll be able to do that.
Great.
See what time it is. All right, we'll give it to like 11:03, just in case other people start showing up, and then we'll kick it off.
Okay.
Well, we'll start kicking it off here. Hello, everyone. My name is Marion Wiley. I'm a senior economics major, also pursuing a certificate in entrepreneurship here at Holy Cross. As a co-chair of the planning committee, this is now my third year planning this conference, and I'm super excited to be hosting both Casey and Aaron. So thank you for joining us. This is Jackie. She's also a woman in business. Last year this was virtual, so we're super excited that we have some in-person aspects of this as well as virtual, so we can reach a broader range. I do want to introduce our alumni guest speakers, Casey Georgeson and Aaron Banta. They will be leading this hour and sharing with us their unique experiences which led to where they are today. So I will open up to you guys, and yeah.
Aaron, do you want to start?
Sure, great. So hi everyone, my name is Aaron Banta. I graduated from Holy Cross in 2009. And while I was a student at the school, I was an English major. So, I mean, I think just kind of jumping into a little bit of my background and what led me to where I am today, I started off as a buyer at Ralph Lauren. I worked there for several years, and then I made kind of a big jump in a transition into finance. So I continued to focus on the consumer space. While I was there, I covered small cap retail companies, so all publicly traded, all that, pursued my CFA, focused on that, and then transitioned to business school at that point. So I went to Columbia Business School after working for 6 years. And that is where I met my co-founder and business partner and hatched the idea for Pepper Home. So it's been kind of an interesting journey. I'm happy to talk about it in more detail as we go through things, but I definitely hit upon a couple different industries before finding my way into the role that I'm in now.
Sweet.
Yep. Okay. So I graduated Holy Cross. I'm Casey. I'm the founder of St. Jane. I graduated Holy Cross in 1999. So 10 years before Aaron. And I was also an English major, a studio art minor. I really wanted to be a studio art major, but my parents kind of dissuaded me. My dad really thought English was much more practical. So I did English, which was great. I knew I wanted to do something creative when I graduated, but I had literally no idea what direction to take. So I moved to San Francisco and for a very short period of time, I took a job with a PR agency and realized quickly I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be on the production side. So moved into television, worked for a startup out here called Tech TV, and then made my way to New York, where I worked for CNN. I was a producer for The Morning Show, which was an incredible experience. I was there for a number of years, and then left New York, came back to San Francisco, and took a random position in innovation for a company called the Wine Group, where I was creating new wine brands for the second largest wine company in the US. They wanted to reach a younger consumer. And so they said, come up with a bunch of different wine ideas, and we're going to launch them in grocery stores and see what hits. And so I happened upon creating a brand for them called Cupcake Vineyards, which has gone on to do very well. It's like the #1 Sauvignon Blanc in the world at this point. And so I realized in that role that I loved innovation and I loved brand creation, but I still didn't really know where to take it. And so I decided to also apply to business school. I went to Stanford Graduate School of Business, and I really got an amazing education in the language of business because up until that point, I'd been very creative focused and didn't know how to use Excel, didn't really, know the traditional language of business. So business school for me taught me a lot about those nuts and bolts. Graduated and took a job, very interesting job with Sephora as the head of marketing and creative for a new team called Kendo, which developed all of the exclusive brands for Sephora. So Marc Jacobs, Kat Von D, Elizabeth and James, Hello Kitty for Sephora, Disney for Sephora. And that was really where I solidified two things: my real love of brand creation. I knew that that was what I wanted to do ultimately, forever. And then the beauty industry. I got a PhD in beauty, which was incredible. And then left Sephora because the travel schedule was too crazy. I had two daughters at that point. I hadn't had my third yet, and decided to go back to the wine group to create more brands for them. And that's what led me to starting St. Jane, where I am now. I had created probably 30 more brands for them out in market. And I was like, I really just need to create my own brand here at some point. And that is where St. Jane starts.
I love that. Thank you so much for those introductions. I'm really excited to have you here today. So I will open it up just to questions. We have some students here, and obviously you have some people via Zoom. So if you ever have any questions, we'll be doing that at the end. We'll probably allocate about 15 minutes or so for that. So I know you talked briefly about it, but what experience led to where you are today? Coming out of college, how did you transition, etc.? And either one of you can start, doesn't matter. You can bounce off each other.
Yeah, I can take a stab at it. I mean, I think like Casey, I wasn't totally sure what I wanted to do out of school either. I knew I wanted to be in the consumer space. I was also passionate about brands and retail, and I always had been. But I think it's hard really figuring out how to start off in that world, especially coming from a school like Holy Cross, where it's a liberal arts background. There are lots of different avenues you can pursue. And so you kind of have to really think creatively about how you're going to start off in that industry. And so for me, it was really, I don't know if I want to do this forever, but beginning at a brand like Ralph Lauren that is global, it's recognizable, it's well established. I think that felt like a really good start for me. I actually also started there because I worked in their retail stores while I was in college. So I had pre-existing relationships. I had also had different internships while I was at Holy Cross. I did the DC program. I also worked in news. I worked for MSNBC, did Meet the Press, all that fun stuff. And then I also had a couple of jobs in finance. So I was really dabbling and testing out a lot of different things. And when I took this first job, I have to be honest, I still wasn't sure if it was totally right. It was also 2009, which was a really tough time to be looking for a job. So there was a lot of uncertainty there. I think that what ended up happening for me is I realized while I was at, and I'm so sorry guys, I'm very sick, so pardon my voice. While I was at Ralph Lauren, I think I realized that, well, I had a really wonderful experience there. I was there for about 3 years. My education really needed to be rounded out in different ways that my job wouldn't allow for. And so that's when I made a big jump into finance, which was super scary. And I was frankly, had no idea what I was doing. Again, I was an English major, so I had no background in accounting. I had no background in math, nothing. And so that was a huge and very scary transition for me. And I think that switch brings me back to like one of the questions we had kind of talked about ahead of this call, which is like, how has your liberal arts education helped you navigate throughout your career? There are a lot of people that have traditional career paths, I think, that do one thing consistently from the time they graduate to the time that they retire. And for those of us that don't do that and make big transitions, and Casey's done the same thing throughout her career, I think you have to have this ability to really think critically and problem solve in different industries. And if you're able to do that, then I think you can thrive and succeed. And I definitely feel that's something that was instilled in us while we were students at Holy Cross. So, I think my message to current students or even recently graduated students is I didn't know what I wanted, even 3 years out of school while I was working. I knew the general direction I wanted to go in. My pipe dream was always to own my own retail business, but I really wasn't certain that I could ever get there. I think what has helped me to get to where I am today is I continuously was pushing myself to say, hey, I'm not totally happy with where I am. So I need to continue to get uncomfortable with my job. It would have been a lot easier to just stay at Rolf and be a buyer. It would have been a lot less scary, but I wouldn't be in the position that I am in right now. And I frankly don't think that path would have led me to business school, which was a really, really critical inflection point for me in terms of being able to start my own company, because there was a lot that I needed to round out in my education before I think I felt really equipped to make that jump.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I know I felt like a ping pong ball in my career.
Yeah.
I feel like I really bounced around, but the core of what Erin just said is so important. And I think it really connects to what you get in your liberal arts education that prepares you for whatever path you take, is this ability, this confidence and this ability to tackle whatever comes your way. And, the fact that I kind of ping ponged around, I think what Holy Cross prepared me for was, with the liberal arts mindset, you tackle so many different things and you're taught to think critically and you're taught to unpack things. And so whenever I tackled a new job, I was never really afraid. I was like, I will figure this out. It's going to be a little bit of a learning curve. And every job I ever started, it was 6 months of me feeling like I was just treading water, trying to get my footing. And then literally 6-month mark was when I feel like, okay, I'm on steady ground. I can actually make an impact here. And I gave myself that freedom in every job that I started to really learn and intake and have the confidence to know that I can tackle whatever comes my way and that I will grow with this team and kind of bloom where I'm planted. But I think that, the liberal arts kind of mentality and for me, it was really about, when I got to CNN, my most sort of pivotal experiences, if I'm looking back on my career, were CNN, which was like a crash course in being able to juggle things on the fly. It was early mornings, it was breaking news, it was lots of moving parts, lots of details. I remember I would, get calls from the executive producer in the control room at 5 a.m. yelling at me like, where's my graphics? This is wrong. You said Marilyn Monroe won an Oscar. She never did. And it was this like very incredible lesson in making sure that everything that I put out there as my work product is a representation of me and my sort of standards for excellence. And I think that came from Holy Cross as well. The small class sizes is not to be kind of underestimated. Like, you are held so accountable for the way you think. And I love that. So I think, for me, it's CNN, it's creating Cupcake, which was a little bit luck, a little bit magic, a little bit the right time, the right place. And I think the brand really resonated. So that brand became kind of the anchor to my career. And it allowed me to really understand from all angles what it takes to create a successful brand. So I would say that was a really pivotal kind of time in my life. That was around, I created that brand in 2006 and then left immediately for business school. And so the whole wine group team brought that brand to life while I was at business school. And so I got to kind of watch it, and it was fascinating. So I would say that. And then business school itself, really sort of same as Erin in terms of not, like I said, not having the language of business. Business school taught me so much. All of my, fellow students had come from finance, accounting, banking. And so they had a head start. I was really catching up. And it was very, very humbling. I felt like I was going to be the first person in history to fail out of business school, but, just sort of like found my grit and found my ability to connect in with all of the subject matter that felt so out of touch. And, they were teaching to the kids who had been, doing investment banking for 4 or 5 years and statistics and accounting and all the things. And so I really, really tested my mettle and was so proud to get through it and not be the only one person to fail out of business school in the first quarter. And then the third for me would be creating Marc Jacobs, because that brand was kind of this was 2013 the biggest brand that had launched in beauty at the time in the industry. It was so kind of groundbreaking. And I got to be at the forefront of it and see how his mind worked and how it connected into the beauty industry, how we brought this brand to life. And I think allowed me to go kind of deeper than I ever had in creating a brand and actually kind of seeing it through and figuring out how to connect its ethos to its success in the market. And so I think those kind of moments in my career are what have been sort of the most impactful to get me to where I am today, which is crazy. It's been 21 years since I graduated Holy Cross, but yeah.
Sweet. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that. The next question I want to dive into is what type of mindset should you have as an entrepreneur? What do you think you should, have there?
I mean, it's so funny. I feel like this is a question that I hear a lot. And I think it's obviously something we consider a lot as our business grows and we're hiring more people. But I think really what it comes down to is you have to be extremely passionate about what you're doing, because being an entrepreneur is not glamorous at all. And being an entrepreneur, regardless of how successful you are, is about failing a lot. And I think it's funny, when I first started Pepper, I was talking to a friend of mine who works in venture capital. So he works with entrepreneurs all the time. And he was like, what's different about your job versus everybody else who kind of has more corporate traditional jobs is that you will fail all the time. That's what is expected of you, in a way that for the rest of us, it's not really supposed to happen. And it is very unsettling. I think it's really, really scary. I think there's a lot of insecurity involved. I always say to people that the first year of Pepper was probably one of the hardest years of my life, just because there's so much uncertainty that you have to deal with. And there's a lot of loneliness. So I think going back to this concept of like, what you need to be an entrepreneur or the skills you need to have in order to be hired by a startup or an entrepreneur is really just, it's a lot of grit. It's a lot of passion and determination. And it's an understanding that like, this is not a 9-to-5 job. This is not a job that you check out of. I'm a mom as well, and it is tough. There is a lot of sacrifice. I'm able to, put my son to bed at night, and that's awesome. But I go back to work after that. I'm always working. I work on weekends, and I'm not complaining because this is what I signed up for. But it's just something you're always thinking about because it is so personal and it's your business. So it's a very different way of thinking about work. And I reflect on the way I think about work now versus the way I thought about work when I was working in other companies. And it's totally different. But at the end of the day, I think if there's like a level of grit and determination and comfort with being uncomfortable a lot, those are really, I think, the foundational points for a good entrepreneur. And I think furthermore, just again, going back to this liberal arts education and how it prepares you for life, it's like, it's problem solving, right? It's thinking critically about a lot of different things. And if you can learn to be a good problem solver, like that is the biggest deal ever, I think, when it comes to succeeding in this world, is just figuring out how to figure things out, for lack of a better word, because you will be doing it all the time. And failure doesn't happen once, it happens many times in many different ways. So I think you just have to have a high tolerance for that and a level of comfort and confidence in yourself that you'll be able to figure things out.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I think we started our businesses at the same time, Erin.
Yes.
2018.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times in that first year I said, I feel like I'm building an airplane mid-flight. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just know that I could crash this airplane at any minute, and it terrifies me. So no matter what you do in your career, and even, I look back at my career and like I said, I ping-ponged around a lot. Nothing prepared me for being an entrepreneur, because being an entrepreneur means you need to wear 5 million hats.
Yes.
You need to know every element of business that you never knew existed. So like, I've always been a brand creator or a television producer, but creative side. All of a sudden in 2019, when this brand started taking off, I was a supply chain manager. I was operations. I was accounting. I was finance. I was payroll. I was retail relationships. I was inventory. I was demand planning. And I was trying to hire a team to help me, but I didn't even know who to hire. I'd been in such a niche creative world that I was like, I just want to create a beautiful brand and create beautiful products that are going to resonate with the beauty industry. But I have to do it all because the brand was so young. And, I was going through kind of consultants and trying to learn the different areas of the business. And do I hire this consultant to actually do this full time? But, they're not a right sort of fit for what we're trying to build here with St. Jane as far as culture and empowering women. And so culture building was really important to me as well. But this like jack of all trades, wear a million hats, the core of being successful at that, I think, is what Erin said too about passion. You have to have passion for your idea, because you are going to eat, sleep, and breathe it and dream it until either you sell your company, quit your company, shut down your company, whatever you do with it. Your passion is what's going to drive the heart and soul of your entrepreneurial idea. And so if you don't have passion, or if you feel like it's maybe a moment in time, don't bother doing it, because it's going to suck so much of your life and your quality time in those, especially in those early years. Like I always say, I feel like St. Jane we're kind of now starting to get out of it, because we started the brand in 2019 and now it's end of 2021. Yes, we had a pandemic in there, but it was like having a toddler. And you guys will realize this, maybe some of you have children, I don't know. But when you have a toddler, you can never take your eyes off of them. You have to watch them at all times so that they don't bang their head into a cabinet or jump off a cliff. That's what it feels like when you're starting a business. You can't take your eyes off it for 1 second, or else it's gonna, go off a cliff. And so the passion is what drives that. And it's what drives you have to talk about it. You have to talk about it with press. You have to talk about it with vendors. You have to talk about it with your team. You have to talk about it with your spouse. You have to figure out how to carve out time for yourself. You have to figure out, I wanted to get my kids involved in the business. So it was just driven by passion. And so I think that is essential to the mindset of becoming an entrepreneur, is the passion for the idea. Because an idea is just an idea, and when it starts to come to life, you have no idea how many other kind of paths you have to take as an entrepreneur to bring it to life and make it successful. So I can't underestimate that. And then of course, grit. I agree with grit, because you can't quit. When you're the founder, it's not like, oh, I'm done. I'm just done. I think I need a break or a sabbatical. Like it's a part of your life. Like St. Jane for us, I always joke, is my fourth daughter, because we're in it, we're invested in it, and it's there's no moving off of it. So yeah, I think that's you gotta have the passion, you gotta have the grit.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely agree with the passion. You can't learn passion, so great advice there. So I want to move on to the next question here. So how did you each get to the point where you had the inspiration to start your own business? What did that look like? What steps did you take to get there?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I knew I always wanted to have a career in retail. That was one thing that, like I said, even before I went to college, I knew that this world interested me. I just wasn't sure if this was going to, running my own business would be a reality, or, as I said before, a total pipe dream. And, making the transition into finance was a big jump for me. And then, frankly, business school really was the pivotal turning point in my journey personally, because that's where I met my co-founder. And so, we were really good friends. We very quickly realized that we had a lot of shared interests, and frankly, more important than anything, complementary skill sets. So, that's where we really started to develop the idea for Pepper. And, we made enough progress. Being in business school, there are a lot of really great incubator programs for entrepreneurs and small businesses and things like that. So we were able to take advantage of those resources and feel our idea out as much as possible before graduating, and get comfortable enough with it to say, hey, we're not going to pursue traditional jobs post graduating. We're gonna do this. We're gonna give it a try. So I would say that's where it started. The inspiration for focusing on the home space actually came for both of us via a trip through India that we took through the school. There's a lot of really incredible home products that are made in India, which is ironically not where we make our stuff. We make everything in the United States, but I think it started to open our eyes up to an industry that we actually weren't super familiar with. We both have backgrounds in retail, but not in the home sector. And so that's why we started to explore that space. But I would say that, frankly, the business that we are today is 180 degrees different from the business that we were when we launched day one. Through our first year of running Pepper, and as I said to you guys, which was a very hard year for us, because frankly, it was not a success at first. It took us time to figure out what we needed to be in order to be appealing to consumers. And so there was a lot of iteration that happened after we launched, but my inflection point was going to school, meeting Kelsey, my business partner, and realizing that, hey, we have an idea, we're still kind of figuring out what it is, but we know that between the two of us, we have the skills to execute this and do what we need to do in order to build a business.
I think it was really smart to have a business partner, Erin.
I don't know how you do it.
It's I think just having
very hard.
Yeah, a partner in crime.
Yeah.
My husband's really supportive. I mean, he has his own
That's
business.
great.
He's an entrepreneur as well. And so he went through it when he started his business in 2008, 2009, and it was a crazy time. And I was at Sephora. So I was kind of like the breadwinner while he was being in startup mode. And now we've kind of flip-flopped. And so having that has been essential. But for me, because I created so many brands throughout my career, I had people saying all the time, like, when are you going to create your own brand? And I never really had the guts to do it because I knew that it was going to take me away from my priorities, which are my kids. I knew that being a founder was going to distract from that. And I didn't feel like I had the big idea yet. I didn't feel like I had something that I'd be passionate enough about to actually go do. And then I was dabbling in creating a beauty brand that pulled from the wine industry with beautiful, kind of byproducts of the winemaking process. I thought that could be really interesting. And then in 2017, I was reading an article on pop sugar, and the headline of the article was about CBD. And the headline was, CBD is nature's Xanax meets Advil. And I was like, wow, that's really an interest. Like, what is this ingredient? I hadn't heard about it. California had just legalized cannabis. And, I'm not a big cannabis user at all, but I was really intrigued by CBD and how incredible it was for reducing inflammation in your system. And so I started learning about it and started realizing that it's a really extraordinary molecule for the skin and for the system. And I thought, wow, if this ingredient does what the scientists think it does, it's the most exciting skincare ingredient of our time. And having been in the industry for a long time, those types of ingredients don't come along very often. But I wanted to do it in a really luxury way. I didn't want it to feel like I was greenwashing or that the product belonged, in a dispensary. I really wanted it to be elevated. I knew I wanted it at Sephora, and I wanted to disrupt the market. And so the idea for St. Jane was the clearest idea for a brand I've ever had. St. Jane, the innocent side of Mary Jane, plus an actual saint who lived in the 1500s and dedicated her life to healing women, and specifically women that society shunned, the very old, the very sick, unwed mothers. And I thought, okay, let's create a brand that has a healing-centric approach to skincare. And that's where the brand kind of came to life. And it wasn't a decision anymore. I felt so passionate about moving forward. And I kept saying, okay, well, as long as this feels right, I'm going to keep doing it. And that was 2018 that it really kind of kicked into gear. And we launched in January of 2019 on St. Jane's birthday, January 28th. And the rest is history. So that was really it. It was this idea around CBD and the powerful benefits for the skin that kind of inspired me to actually take the leap.
Perfect. Thank you for that. So you both have very unique careers in niche industries. So how have you separated yourself from your competitors, and how do you continually innovate?
Yeah, so again, I think my experience starting Pepper was really, really different from Casey's. Like, she had a clear idea from the beginning that she was really sold on. For us, it was different. Like, if I'm being completely transparent, was not totally sold on our value proposition when we launched our business. What it really was again, having a business partner that I believed in and feeling like, hey, we're going to be able to figure this out somewhere along the road. And so what happened to us in our first year of business, so Pepper is a textiles and wallpaper company. And at this point, our main differentiator is the fact that we customize products. So you go on our website, we design all of our textiles and wallpaper, and you can customize a pillow or curtain, other soft goods and decor, and get that product in 10 days or less. And so this is an industry that's traditionally really only friendly to interior designers. If you want, a textile product, usually you have to be working with an interior designer to even have access to it. And then furthermore, there's a lot of complication in the customer experience side of things where you have to figure out, like, how do I measure my windows? How do I know what size, what length curtains I need? All these kind of variables that make the purchase a really high intent purchase. And so our main focus at this point is really not only just offering, beautiful products, but more importantly, offering a really seamless experience that enables people to get comfortable with buying this product on their own instead of working with a professional to do it. But none of that was a factor of our business when we first launched. Like when we launched, we had the same product, but it was finished goods, and we were manufacturing overseas in Portugal. So very early on, and why that first year was so difficult for us is our manufacturing and our supply chain essentially failed. Like our manufacturer was not reliable. We have, our brand, we don't focus on basics. We focus on patterns and color and all those things. So we have a ton of SKUs, and we launched with a lot of SKUs. And so we really had to be thinking about inventory a lot. And we realized, like, our business will fail if we continue to have to buy inventory upfront and make predictions about it. And so very early on, because we realized that this customer service piece of this custom element of our business, which we didn't have at that point, was going to be our main point of differentiation, we moved our manufacturing into the United States. And for us, and Casey goes back to talking about like wearing a lot of hats, which I think is so true. Like, we were so focused on the product being beautiful, the brand being amazing, spending all this money on branding and all that stuff. And what we started to understand over time is we are going to be competitive, and we will be able to build essentially a competitive moat if we can be smarter than all of our peers, for lack of a better word, about supply chain. So that really has become our core focus. And as we've moved into it, the first step was moving into the United States. And what that enabled us to do is get the goods faster. So we would print our fabric, and then we would hold our fabric as unfinished goods. And so we could cut and sew into the demand. So we wouldn't have to make predictions about, are people going to buy napkins? Are they going to buy pillows? Are they going to buy curtains? It's just, you're going to buy the product, and then we're going to sew it once you as the customer tell us what you want. And so after moving into the United States, that was phase one. And then phase two was becoming an on-demand manufacturer, which essentially means that, when you go on our website and you buy something, it's not already made. We're going to make it for you, and you're going to get it really quickly. And so that has really been our point of differentiation, and why we really continue to iterate on the supply chain side of things, because being smart about that not only enables us to offer the customization that makes our business interesting to people, but it also enables us to be competitive on price with other companies in the space. And so that's where our focus is these days. And the design element of it is still important. Brand is still important. All those things still really matter. But at the end of the day, we view ourselves as a customer experience business more than anything else.
Yeah, I think that's so key, sort of hitting on this. You have to figure out how you do it better than anyone else out there, and understand who your client is and what the opportunity is to be different. So for us, it was, at the time, the only brands that existed in CBD, let alone CBD skincare or CBD beauty, were brands that were very crunchy, very hippie, looked like they belonged at Whole Foods, felt very connected to pot, like just not elevated, and not something that I felt like our demographic would want to have on their vanity. And so it was very kind of easy at the time to jump into the market as a very different player. And we got so much press for it. I've never seen a brand launch like we launched in terms of the buzz. And I just kept saying, this brand is like the pretty girl at the dance. This is not going to last. And guess what? It has not lasted. And now we're having to really fight for the differentiation, because what happened was we were so disruptive when we launched. We got into Sephora, we got into Neiman Marcus, we got into Barney's, rest in peace. We got into Nordstrom and Bloomingdale's, like all these retailers were clamoring to have us. And then the two things happened. The pandemic hit, which was shattering for our retail business because we had put all of our eggs into the retailer basket because being CBD, we couldn't advertise like normal beauty brands. We couldn't use Instagram, we couldn't use Facebook, we couldn't use Google or Google Shopping. Retargeting was tough. Like the Criteos of the world wouldn't even talk to us. And so we weren't able to operate normally. So we put all of our eggs in the retailer basket and used our retailers as our influencers and tapped into their platforms to tell our story. And it was really successful in year one. And then the pandemic happened and all the retailers were just scrambling. They were trying to figure out their footing. And also what happened was because we made such a splash in the beauty industry, we've had so many copycats. And it's hilarious because I'm like, okay, the CBD market is still so nascent. There's so much room for everybody, but everyone thinks that we're so big that they can steal our market share. I'm like, we're just still so small. And so we're having to really fight for our differentiation with the competitive set because there's just so much more noise. And I think also CBD has been really tricky because it got very quickly oversaturated. Like there were brands like ours, beautiful kind of luxury skincare brands, but then there were also brands selling, CBD products at 7-Eleven and gas stations. And so CBD became kind of a trend and had a bit of an ick factor by the end of I would say like summer 2020 was when it started to feel like, okay, we've really got to like step up our game and continue to message why we believe that CBD is a vitamin and why it's so good for the skin. It got a lot harder. And that kind of like pretty girl at the dance brand feeling was replaced with, oh my God, we've really got to figure out what levers are going to scale this business. And so that's been really, really challenging, but really rewarding because, in the face of all of these challenges and uncertainty is when the best innovation comes. And we have so many things on the horizon that I think would never have happened if we hadn't kind of faced the adversity of the pandemic and, 2020 and some of the headwinds that the brand started to feel. So yeah, it's been really good, but lots of challenges along the way. And you just have to, tackle them one by one. And also the other thing that kind of struck me early on was I tend to be someone who gets, very turbo. I'm an accomplishment junkie. I don't want to stop until it's finished. And when you're a founder of a brand, it's sort of never finished. And so I had to give myself the freedom to say, worst case scenario, this brand fails. And I put our own money into it and I put my heart and soul into it, my reputation, all of it. Worst case scenario, the brand doesn't make it, which a lot of brands don't. I was like, okay, if that happens, I'll write a book about what it was like to create a business and then fail at it. And once I sort of switched my kind of turbo mindset into worst case scenario, you're still going to be okay. Everything kind of like the skies sort of parted. And I was like, you know what, this is just a journey, and whatever journey, wherever it ends or wherever this journey takes us all, it's going to be okay. And I'm not going to look back and have any regrets.
Yeah, thank you for talking about that. Failure is definitely a huge part of learning at school and being an entrepreneur. I kind of want to transition now. So obviously as business owners, you each have had to hire people. And that being said, how should Holy Cross students or alumni set themselves apart from the competing market?
Yeah, I think applying for roles at startups, it's so, I feel like it's really tough to explain, right? Because I think if you're a more mature business, like for example, I think about us in 5 years, I think it will be a lot clearer who we're looking to hire, or frankly, there are certain roles where there's a skill set that you just know somebody that has to have, and it's very black and white. Like for us, for example, I talked about supply chain before. Like we really, our next hire is going to be somebody like a supply chain manager. And so you have a very specific background for that. But we also have employees that cover a lot of different things. They cover social media, they cover brand partnerships, things like that. And excuse me, their backgrounds weren't really indicative of them being good hires for these roles. It was more so just that they had certain inherent qualities that have made them really critical to our business. and have made the fit work. And I think, again, this just goes back to, I hate to sound like a broken record, but like being a really hard worker and having a lot of grit and determination and being very comfortable with figuring things out on your own and taking initiative. I can't tell you, and that sounds so straightforward, but I think there are a lot of people that really are not good at that and are not comfortable with it. They're not comfortable with stepping into a role and being like, okay, I don't have 17 bosses above me, and I'm not at a huge corporation where everything is built out and there's this huge structure and machine in place where I'm just going to be kind of a cog in a wheel and I'm going to do this job. And frankly, like going back to my time at Ralph Lauren, that's what that was. Like I operated in such a silo that even if I wanted to make my role more creative or expand upon it or approach it differently than the person before me had, I didn't have the opportunity to do that because they were like, no, sorry, we are a multi-billion-dollar corporation and we do things a certain way here. And I didn't like that. That wasn't good for my personality. And so I think it does come down to a little bit of a personality factor where it's like, if you're somebody that likes paving your own road, for lack of a better word, and figuring things out for yourself and being comfortable with kind of like not always having a ton of direction and failing, as we talked about before, I think those are the things that make you good at your job. There are these, qualities you don't learn in school and you just kind of have them or you don't. And I think the thing that's really good about Holy Cross, my husband went to Holy Cross, my sister went to Holy Cross. I have so many friends from Holy Cross that have done really well and succeeded in their various careers. And I look at them and I'm like, what makes you good? And I think it's really like, they might not necessarily be like the smartest person in the room, but it's like they are hardworking. They are super dynamic. They are really willing to push for things that they want. And that's what sets them apart. And I think that, those qualities are interesting to us hiring for, these more entrepreneurship roles. They take you a long way. And I think beyond that, there are just other things you can do. Like you can become a specialist. You can say, all right, I want to work at a startup, but for 3 years, I'm going to first go work in marketing, or I'm going to work in PR, or I'm going to do something else. And, those skill sets could make you an interesting hire for a startup also. But I really think what it comes down to are these like qualities that cannot be taught. It's just, you are that way or you're not. And that's really what makes you valuable. And I think will set you apart if you just say, hey, I want to go work at a startup. They're just critical qualities to have.
Yeah, I would add to that I think you have to choose whether it's a startup or whether it's a traditional job. You have to choose something that you're very interested in also, because that curiosity is so important. And no matter what, whether it's a startup or whether it's like you're a cog in a wheel and there's a very specific job description and you're not meant to go out of bounds in that job description, being at a startup is the opposite of that. There's usually very loose job descriptions and you have to wear many, many hats. You have to approach it with so much intellectual curiosity, regardless of which route you take. And I think that intellectual curiosity meets go-getter, meets you take it as far as you can possibly take it, and then you ask a couple of questions to get it over the finish line. If you can be autonomous, independent, but know when to ask for help, and also come to the table with a great attitude, like this sort of confidence that I can tackle anything. I'm going to take it as far as I can. I'm curious. I'm interested. I'm engaged. I'm passionate about the success and the company success, the team success, my individual success. At Sephora, we were actually bonused on those 3 areas. And it was how the company performed, how your team specifically performed, and then how you as an individual performed. And that made up your bonus. And I thought it was a really great kind of mindset of, you've got to think big picture, you've got to think sort of middle of the road picture with your team, and then you've got to think individual. And how do you continue to drive forward the goals of the company, the goals of your team, and your individual goals? But I think this kind of like spirit of curiosity, passion, go-getter, wear a lot of hats, whatever you need me to tackle, I will dive in, I will figure it out, and I will help you. I will build this with you, I think is going to get you really far, no matter what path you choose.
Yeah.
Perfect. That took us to the 15 minutes allocated for questions. So now I'm going to open it up to student questions. If any of you have any questions, please raise your hand. You're more than welcome to speak. For people via Zoom, you can send in a chat, you can raise your hand on the icon. And if no one has any immediate questions, I do have some questions that people have asked already on Huba that I can dive into, but first I want to open it up to the room first. So students, do any of you have any questions immediately? Oh, I think we have one online.
Here, I can read it out. So the question is, hello all, my question is for Casey. How did you leverage social media to build your brand?
So social media has been really interesting. It's a great question. Social media for us has always been very organic. I saw a lot of brands buying followers and buying growth. And for us, it was about real community building. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time, which was, we were really facing some of those headwinds with Facebook did not allow social media didn't allow boosting and advertising for CBD brands. Hold on one second. There's so much noise in the background. One second. I have to yell at everyone to be quiet. One second. I don't know if that worked. So we couldn't boost our posts. So normally a brand can post something on Instagram, hit the little boost button, and reach much larger audiences. You pay $5 a day, $10 a day. I didn't realize that was the key to success for social media for a lot of beauty, skin, any brand. And so we didn't do it. We were building everything just super organically. Influencers would reach out to us. We would get new followers through press. It was really cool. And then I was starting to advertise the brand, not knowing that Facebook and Instagram would get so upset about it. And it's funny because at one point in 2019, Facebook shut me down personally, my personal Facebook, because you have to advertise through your personal account. They want to make sure a person's behind it. If you look on my personal and my ads manager, it's like red everywhere. Like this person has been banned forever from using Facebook products because of CBD. And so it was a rocky road in building our social media in the first year. But what I loved about it was that we did it very organically and we did it through community. And the community piece of it has served us really well. We've now been able to open up some advertising and we started boosting posts, but with the iOS update, which I don't know if you guys are aware of, there was this big update in the spring of this year. It made it a lot harder for brands to target audiences to grow their communities. And so we've recently hidden all of our like counts because we believe that it doesn't do much. Likes for posts are just all optics and it's not real community building. So we've hidden all of our likes and we've stopped boosting. And so we're back to grassroots organic community building. And I feel like that is right for us, given that we're such a small, kind of indie, authentic brand. But it's, social media is essential. I think it's your platform, it's your advertising for your brand. Most people go to your Instagram before they go to your website. So we're still very focused on it and making sure it's a success, but it's been a rocky kind of uphill battle for us to get social media up and running. And it's still not, we still can't do Instagram shopping because we're CBD, which really hurts our bottom line. And, we can't do Shopify payments, which is also a really nice integration into Instagram for revenue. So there's still some headwinds being CBD, but I think that, building social media authentically and really focusing on your community, engaging with people, making sure that there's someone behind it is essential.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. Okay, does anyone else have questions? Anyone in the room here or online?
So what did you guys major in at Holy Cross, and how do you think your education here has impacted your career today?
Were you able to?
Yep. So I believe Casey and I both majored in English, and then you said a studio art minor, Casey? Yeah. So yeah, so somewhat similar backgrounds. I think majoring in English, it's a lot of people are kind of like, oh, you run a business, you majored in English, that's a little random. But I think at the end of the day, it's actually not random at all. Casey brought up something that I actually kind of forgot about, which is the small class size at the school. And I remember, and I feel like in English especially, our class sizes were really small. They were like 8 people in some cases. And so you were really always on the spot and you really couldn't hide or get away with anything. And I remember being having some really incredible professors that frankly scared me in a good way. But I think, I just think that was really, really important. Always having to be prepared, really having to be on in class. I think there are lots of bigger universities where you can totally check out and you can not do the work and not really lean into things. And you don't have a choice at Holy Cross, I think in general, but especially with English. I think as far as that major preparing me specifically for the role that I'm in now, I mean, listen, being a good writer and communicator is really important in any job that you do. It doesn't matter. And you would be surprised about how many people aren't great communicators. So I think that's probably like fundamentally something that has served me well, whether or not I was working in finance or in fashion or running my business now. It's just being able to kind of communicate my perspective. And it's funny, like my business partner was an engineer undergrad. She's very good at math, something that I wish I was better at, but I'm not. But you know, when we think about a lot of the brand direction and things on that front, she's like, yeah, I can't do that. That is not my world. So yeah.
Yeah, I think what you said, Erin, is right on. Communication as an English major was the skill set of a lifetime. It was being able to say what you want to say in a very succinct amount of time. You don't have a lot of time as a brand creator to get your message across. You have to say it fast, you have to say it clear. And so for me, I think the wine industry was also a nice way to reinforce that, where you had to tell your story in a wine label, which was like a little 3x5 amount of space. And you had to pass the blink test as people walked down a wine aisle of like 5,000 different options. You had to tell your whole brand story in a little 3x5. Bonus if someone picked up the bottle and actually read the back label, but you had to stand out in a sea of options. And so I think Holy Cross really honed that for me. It was a different time, and I don't know how it is now, but it was, you know, this was back in 98, 99. Because of my sort of blended approach, English and studio art, I approached all of my classes with kind of a blended strategy where I would take a visual approach to all of my essays for my English major. And so I would support it with, you know, giant photography that I did in the photo studio or big giant canvases. And I think it was so different and kind of breakthrough at the time to communicate that way throughout my classes. And I always had a focus on the female protagonist in any novel that we read for any of the English classes. I was super early feminist. I was very passionate about what was it like from this one woman's angle. And so I would find whatever the female character was, whether minor, major, whatever, I would sort of unpack the narrative from that perspective. And, you know, for me, it was really about that communication, that storytelling, that perspective, that dedication to women, and then the combination of the visual and the written. And I got a lot out of it. I mean, I feel like it really prepared me for CNN, which was all visual and very short words. You had to really tell your story in 60 seconds or less. So I think the education was critical to the foundation for what I ended up doing. And I'm at the end of the day, so glad I did English and art together, but English specifically.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Any other questions from the audience, either on Zoom or in person? If not, I will dive into a Huva question. So someone on Huva asked, can you give an example of failure and how you overcame that and turned that into a success? I know both of you have mentioned the importance of failure, but yeah.
Yeah, I would say for me, at least within Pepper specifically, you know, as I said, we were not the pretty girl at the dance when we launched our business. I would say our launch was a failure, and it was very painful at the time. But had we not failed very fast when we launched, I don't think that we would have ever figured out the kind of business that we needed to be today. And so I would say that that's really been an interesting thing to reflect upon, because it was really, really hard to go through at the end. You put all the, or at the beginning, it was, you know, you put all this work into launching a business, all this time, energy, blood, sweat, and tears, and to have it not be a hit with customers at first is so challenging, but it was the best education that we could have received, and frankly, the best thing that could have happened to us, because it really pushed us to hone in on our value proposition and our point of differentiation, and it's serving us really, really well today. And as hard as it was, I wouldn't take it back for a moment.
Yeah, everyone fails at some point. It's a par for the course. I would say we had a lot of failures in our first year. There's supply chain failures, there's operation failures, there's choices that I made on hiring failures. I made some really bad hiring choices at first. I just didn't know. And then I would say there have been some pretty significant failures around listening to recommendations that at the time felt wrong, but I also felt obligated to listen to them, specifically from some of our retail partners. Things like don't launch too many products don't launch too many products in 1 year, which we only launched one product this year. And that was a big miss for our business because our superpower is press. And so I think that's really contributed to kind of a hit to our growth this year. We're still growing, which is good. Excuse me, I'm sick as well. But I think that was a huge mistake. I think we also have made some distribution mistakes, like we're launching some global too quickly. And that's really hurt us. We're not set up for success yet. So I could go on, but I'm going to drink water.
Does anyone else have any questions? I think we have.
So in talking about like how you build your brand's narrative and image and all of that, how do you decide who to work with, how to partner with people, and like collaborations and stuff like that? So like now that you've established this core brand that is so like genuine, when you're looking outside of that to work with others, how do you stay like true to your values and true to your brand's purpose while also collaborating with others?
When you say collaboration, are you thinking more in terms of like the people that you work with to build your brand? Or are you thinking about people that you work with to represent your brand, like influencers? Which specifically?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking mostly about public figures, influencers, or retail places.
Sure. Yeah, so I think first of all, I think that building a brand is a really iterative process. Pardon me, I cannot speak right now. Again, we spent a lot of money working with a fancy agency to build a brand out of the gate that we, like 6 months in, we're like, nope, this is not right. And so the brand that we are today is very different from the brand that we were, when we launched, and it's going to be very different than the brand that we are a year from now. I think one thing in terms of the influencer stuff, because I'm sure that you guys as consumers see that all over Instagram, that is a very hard world to navigate, especially now. Everybody, I can't tell you how many people reach out to us asking for free product or asking for product and asking to get paid for things. I think the approach that we've taken is we really restrict the amount of influencers that we work with, because I think those are kind of like some of the core people for us. We don't really do as much wholesale. We did some at the beginning, but we're really a direct to consumer business. So an influencer would be kind of a good representation of a partner for us. And it really comes down to like, do they want the product for themselves? Because there are a lot of influencers that you'll see that will push product, and they're not pushing the product because they like it. They're pushing it because they're getting paid for it. And I think it's very obvious when that happens. And so our viewpoint is like, we really want to only work with the people that would also be our customers, that like genuinely love the thing that we're selling, because you can totally see the difference when you work with somebody like that versus somebody who just is in it to make a buck. And so the influencer world changes every day. There are obviously other avenues for which you can kind of partner with people to represent your brand, but that's a core one for us. I would also say that as we get bigger, we're doing a lot more in terms of collaborations with other brands. And I think what it just comes down to is making sure that you're really aligned in the kind of community that you want to build, the perspective, the aesthetic, all those things. And when you start, like when you're starting out and you just want to get your name out there, it's really easy to try and take shortcuts to do things. Like Casey was saying, buy followers on Instagram, like work with any influencer that offers to work with you. And I think you have to practice a lot of self-restraint to say, like, I'm gonna maybe pass on some opportunities that could be good, but that they just don't feel right for our brand. And know that that is like the long-term view of building things, which is only really collaborating with people that you are truly aligned with, and that frankly reach the same kind of customer base that you're trying to reach.
I 100% agree. I think Erin nailed it exactly the way I would answer it. It's all about alignment of values and making sure you're not going for that short-term growth.
Perfect. We have reached the 12 o'clock time. I know that there was one other question in the Zoom link. So there is a chat option on Whova where we can have a conversation between everyone. Casey and Erin, you'll be able to answer questions if anyone puts a chat in there. So I think that's really the next steps here for moving forward. So I really appreciate Casey and Erin for spending your Saturday with us. We really appreciate your insight. Thank you for the students and for the alumni who showed up. And yeah, just round of applause for everyone. Thanks so much.
Guys, bye.
Bye. Have a good one.
Again.